we actually kind of prepared kind of a 3-step thing, like what I helped to do for the last year for this event. But we could also dive into what you just asked, because what you asked was very, very, very loaded. Okay, but I would like to, I wanted to start off with what he just talked about a little bit. I just want to touch on this. To build a program or an event like this, it takes many years, many relationships on many levels. And when I say that, it's not just the relationship I have with, let's say, Kareem over the years, or Brandon, or just Deanna. It's also the LA County Fair, the personnel that work there, and how we were able to expand from one booth, how we got that second booth. Because I had a client that worked in commercial sales and said, hey, we got this opening in Building 4. By the way, Building 4 is our #1 booth every year now for the last 3-4 years. And then you have the third booth that we introduced 2 years ago. As a coordinator, I think when I was not a coordinator, obviously listening to the likes of, the Larry Rodriguez and Kareem and Andy Burtons, and learning from them and realizing that when you're a good team player for so many years and you do right by everybody on the team, that when you're put in a position of leadership, all of a sudden you have gained that respect and trust. And that has a lot to do with our successes. I have to make sure that I am likable, that I cut through the BS. I do cut through the BS, but I do it out of, I'm genuine. This year, one thing I had to show the team was how much that Kareem was actually sacrificing to try to gain a thing of, cookware at a booth to get to $1 million. Because the truth is, to get to $1 million, we couldn't do it with just 3 knife booths this year. If it wasn't for the cookware, we would have never hit it, because we had a lot of challenges and roadblocks this year with attendance and the weather, people getting sick, personnel, all this kind of stuff happened. So, we brought in, when we started the meeting and talking about the meeting, I started 11 months ago by talking to the lady in charge of the sponsorship for cookware. And she actually had no idea Cutco had cookware. So for coordinators out there, if your promoter is stopping you from doing cookware, you might want to find out what's going on with contracts with other cookware companies. And I just posed the question to her, hey, are these cookware companies like KitchenCraft, are they paying you $100,000 to have the exclusive right to this event? She's like, oh, I wish we got that much money. I'm like, well, what you need to do is you need to make this competitive. You need to open it up to other companies that sell cookware, so that way you're getting a little bit of money or more in the end by having multiple competitors versus one person, blocking the way for the other people to come in. Then when she's like, yeah, she was open to it, I had to talk to Kareem. Because Kareem is the best person on our team by far, knows how to sell cookware, by far. And so if anyone's going to do cookware and do a demonstration of cookware and sell it, it was going to be this guy. So then I kind of had to talk to Kareem. And then Kareem is like, okay, let me bounce this around. Let me run the numbers. Let me see what's going to do. And then he'll talk about what he needs to talk about with cookware. Then Brandon contacted me in June. He said, Leah, I'm going to be co-coordinating with you this year at the LA Fair. Here's how I can help. Here's my strengths. This is what I can do. And I'm like, awesome. Because when it comes to training, that's not my super, super strong point. My super strong point is getting schedules, making sure everybody's equal in terms of shifts or who's working where, who works well with who, all the background stuff. Training, I can teach some things, but I'd rather have other people that are way better than me teach. Yes, I sell $300,000 a year, but that's nothing compared to this guy that doubles me, So he was a great addition, and he'll talk about more of what he taught us and the stuff with that. But pretty much the first training meeting was about me putting down the hammer with one team, one mission, 1 million. And that was like it was like, oh God, this is a time that I can't be funny about things. I have to be raw and real. And I had to pose the question to the team. It's like, look, if you had the opportunity to have your own booth, right? But you were going to put $40,000 on the line to do it, not knowing if you're going to be successful, would you take that chance? Most of them were like, absolutely not. I'm like, well, that's what Kareem's doing for us. And so you have to be selfless in order for something big to happen. Each individual on our team had to be, willing to give up cookware orders to Kareem, was willing to not worry about writing up an order for Brandon, just handing it to Brandon. It's ROR. Doing all this stuff because our bigger mission was not about so-and-so selling $100,000 for the month of September. It was a team doing 1 million. And I wrote down a whole bunch of different numbers. Those of you who love numbers, Okay, so the first weekend, by the way, we did terrible. We were like behind by like 60 grand from the year previous. So it was a failure. Like the first 4 days, we're just like looking at each other like the numbers don't look good now. One of the bright spots that happened midway during the fair that really, I think, put more energy into our team, other than I put my emails together saying so-and-so did 9K that day, who could beat it, was Dave Bush. So Dave Bush, if you're in the room, I don't know where he is, but I'm going to give him a shout out. Having somebody from Olean come to a show and go to all 4 booths, buying us lunch, telling my customers, oh my God, this guy's, he's from Olean, he came out to see us. He's like, oh, let's, we got him a drink, It's like, it brings energy into the team. So because of Dave Bush coming out halfway through, I think it made a big turning point impact in our team mentally. Because sometimes you're going, it's the grind. 9 days in, you're like, oh my God, are we gonna do this million? It's very difficult. Another bright spot was the second to the last day, and Brandon can talk about this because he jump-started this, having our 100K day. Like, how many offices actually sell 100K in a month anymore, especially in September? We did $102,000 September 23rd. $102,000. $42,000 came from one booth, and about 20-something came from all the other 3 booths individually. So think about that. Those are big turning points. In the end, our Building 4 booth actually grew by 13 grand. Unfortunately, our other 2 booths did not grow. They kind of were under the year before. Again, when you add a cookware booth, you're going to have also knife sales there. And we all understood that. And Kareem, he's a superstar when it came to selling knives. His customers are going to go to his booth anyways. So really, I think the sales just got diverted to the cookware that he would have got at our knife booth. So it's not a big deal there. And also it came down to, I think, the last hours of the fair. I remember I'm very much into staying on top of stats or coordinators. Throughout the whole show, especially if it's a 10-day or more show, you need to be on top of the stats, having people put in the Google Doc where you guys are at so you know what is going on. So we're down to the last, it was 8 p.m., in 2 hours we're going to close. I look at Brandon, I'm like, Brandon, what are you at? Okay, what are you at, Deanna? Okay, wait, sending out a group text. Hey, where are you guys at? We need to figure this out. Like, are we going to fail by 2 grand? And really, at that point, we were probably easily 12 grand still behind $1 million at that point, easily. And I'm like, looking at Brandon, I'm like, we got to do something. And so all of a sudden, it was just like motivation. Reps, all of a sudden, we're grabbing customers. It's like the last 2 hours of show on a Sunday, the last day. It's not good at all. John Israel was just like, grabbed a customer and said, hey, let me show you this. Sold them a homemaker. Like, Deanna ran to a that promised her he'd buy a set from her by the end of the fair. She goes running to another building to go get him to buy an ultimate. Like, it was like crazy things were happening the last 2 hours just to hit the million goal, because we thought we were going to actually lose it by 2 or 3 grand. And so in the end, we did about 7,000 over, but it was stressful. And honestly, $1 million seems like a good number, but we were shooting for 1.25 million. That's what was our goal, 1.25. And even though in a way we failed, we also succeeded, but I think we have a lot to learn from our mistakes this year, and we're only going to grow from here.
All right, I'm going to have a few notes here, so I'm going to bring this over. So the first thing that I want to share is credit needs to be given where credit's due. And these 2 individuals have been coordinating the LA County Fair since I started the business, which was like 10 years ago. And so they get like all the props and recognition for actually hitting $1 million. I really came into the game very late. There was a lot of momentum already being built up to that point. So I really feel like I did very little. I just played the role as a representative in my individual production. So obviously, they have a lot more to share in regards to like the long-term vision, and really that's what it was. It was a vision, right? We've been hearing that as a reoccurring theme individually, and as each divisional fair and show team is like, have a vision. What's your vision for your own personal business? What's your vision and your commitment to the fair and show team? But they were preaching $1 million 10 years ago when I started. Specifically Kareem, he manifested that from 10 years, right? Overnight success, try 10 years. So something to keep in mind for those of you that have a $20,000 show or a $40,000 show. Really quick, I know you're going to talk more about this, but do you remember what the event did like 10 years ago, roughly? Yeah, $33,000 in 2002. So over like 16 years, right? That amount of growth. So obviously one thing to just consider is like don't have a limiting belief with your own personal show. I'm gonna let Kareem touch on that more so. But I'll never forget like my first LA County Fair training, and I was like super baby rep, probably just hit FSM, had a chance to work the LA County Fair. And one thing we've always consistently done every single year is had like drill for skill, right? And so I don't know if that's something that's practiced amongst every division, but you know, if you probably remember the first time you did drill for skill and you're like a new rep and super nervous and you're in front of all these like high-end performers, is like that pressure, but also like a healthy pressure of like knowing that you had to perform, and the weeks leading up to that of practicing the scripts consistently. You know, there's a broad variety of people in this room, from coordinators to people who just started a few months ago, but it's like, are you giving your scripts the level of commitment that is needed for you to up-level your averages, right? Double your shift averages. So a couple things specifically in like the last couple years that I feel like had a huge impact on the performance of the LA County Fair team. And by the way, these are things that obviously coordinators may already be doing and implementing or could implement, or things that you guys as members of the Fair and Show team might say, you know what, this is really good. I would like to get this more integrated into the division, and you can spearhead that, right? So look at it from two different angles. But one is like we just had a group thread running during the LA County Fair. And really that group thread had a few purposes and intentions behind it. One was obviously to share hot news, but it wasn't like, hey, bragging rights of like, oh, this is what I sold for the day, look at me. It was, you know, it had a couple different purposes behind it. One was if it is a slow day, right, and there's another day where there's another booth that's performing at a high level, selling 15, 20, 25,000, and another booth is slow, they can see that, you know what, hey, our booth is slow right now, but there's customers out there today just in another building buying Cutco. So what does that mean? Pay attention to each and every customer that you have a connection with or that you're connecting with throughout the day, right? I talked about this in my message before, but it's very easy to like disconnect when you haven't talked to someone in like 3 hours, right? We all know what that's like. So like what systems can you put in place to always keep yourself like on point through the 12, 15 hours? And having a group thread helped with that outcome. Also, sharing not just hot news, but like rare occurrences of things that you could learn from other people. So, you know, I remember John Israel was like, yeah, someone walked up, I was trying to close a homemaker, they were about to walk, dropped all the way down to one piece, closed them on one piece before they walked away, and then upsold them back to like a flatware set. Like super extreme and random, right? But he talked about how that happened, what the conversation and dialogue was like, right? Or selling 2 or 3 flatware sets on one single order. How does that happen? Certain types of orders don't happen a lot, but when it did happen, it was like, how did he do that, or how did he or she do that, and how can we implement that into our scripts, right? You guys got a lot of good one-liners over the last couple days. You probably have pages of notes, but imagine that over like, you know, a 10, 20, 30-day period of an event, and being able to like implement really good lines immediately, right when you hear something. So that was another thing. And one thing I did that I felt like had a great impact this last year was I just took responsibility for keeping the correct mindset of the team and keeping the right focus, right? Especially when, as Leah was talking, we're $60,000 behind after the first weekend. Like that can be very defeating. So like reminding ourselves what the vision is, what the focus is, what to think about every single day. And also when we had a big day as a team, it's like, how can we have a bigger day, right? Never settling for a big day, but how can you make it bigger, right? Constantly exploring what your full potential is. A few other things, a few standards we had in place was everyone on the team, right, had to sell on average $3,000 or more for the day, right? Now, a couple of people fell below that, but the principle behind that is to have that high standard in place. Like this is an elite group of people, and we want to hold that standard high so everyone up-levels their results and up-levels their statistics. And so having that standard in place and encouraging people who feel like that might be hard for them to hit that for the day, how can they learn, right? Me reaching out, other people on the team reaching out and helping people grow, like taking the team camaraderie component. Another thing that I trained on leading up to the fair was objections, right? I was sharing this with a few other people. I think it was Adam Conroy earlier. But it's like, when you're working an event, and even you guys can implement this just for your year. It's like, what are the 1 or 2 biggest areas that are the biggest needle movers specifically for fairs and shows, right? And one of the biggest ones is objections, like handling objections, right? If you can become a master at handling objections, how many more sales are you going to be able to create? Even if you take a really great day of like $10,000, right, which very few people have had a 10K day, right, and you let 2 people walk. Normally, the people that are walking are who? The people who are $1,000 plus orders, right? Close one of them. You just increased your sales for the day by 10%. And that's if you're selling 10K for the day, which is huge, right? 4K, 5K, right? That's going to be 20, 30, 40% increase in your production for one day by handling one objection, getting that one person to not walk away and think about it, and closing. So we drilled that home really hard, and that's something that you guys can do now just to impact your overall business. We had about 1,800 orders. For those that are interested, we averaged as a team about $500 per order, right? So pretty good, strong average across the board. 10% of our sales was from upserving, right? So that was a focus. We keep track of that, so that had a big impact as well. And the last few things I would share is like just breaking like $1 million, whether you're going for $1 million, whether you're trying to get a 3-day event to do $50,000 or whatever the numbers are, is like break it down into small chunks, including your year, right? It's easy to get overwhelmed from like the grand picture of what you actually want to do, but like take the LA County Fair, right? You got 19 days, right? And each person's working a certain amount of days, and within those days you have a certain amount of hours you're working. Well, don't even worry about the hour. What do you need to worry about? The one customer that's in front of you, right? So break it down into small chunks. Is how can I impact this customer the most right now, because this is all that matters. And you focus on that one thing over an entire event, and you're going to have a large impact from that. And then the last few things, and everyone has different strategies on this. Again, it's not, everyone can do what they feel like is right or what their division is right, but we decided this past year to incorporate essentially like retail online pricing for the fair and show, like LA County Fair team. So instead of doing like really large discounts, which we've done in the past, we started doing like, homemakers at normal price, throwing a free ice cream scoop or something. So there's a lot of value from Cutco at the regular price that it is, right? And I've always believed this, but when you have a bunch of other people that are selling at a more discounted price, you're afraid to sell it for retail because someone could undercut you. But the reality is Cutco should be worth 50%, 100% more than what it is, right? Wusthof is, Henkel's is. There's no reason why Cutco shouldn't be. So why can't you build enough value for customers to justify the price at what it is regular? So that's a whole nother message, but something that had a big impact. Even like our 5-piece specials for the most part were like regular prices, throw in a free peeler or something like that. We had more package deals. The more packages you have, I think the better you can serve your customers. So we had like, 2 flatware set, 3 flatware set package deals, right? Versus just 1. We had hunting knife package deals. We also had an exclusive package, which I think Kareem created, which is like random knives that normally aren't included in like the ultimate set or in the signature set. So it's like customer walks up and they're like, oh, we have everything. Oh, have you seen our LA County Fair exclusive package that you can only get at the LA County Fair? And it was 5 like bird's beaks, right, Santoku knives that normally don't come in the sets that most people don't have, and it's an easy, quick sale that's $400 or $500 CPO. All right, and then we upgraded our booths, right? You got to, you want to have we were talking about dress for success, right, earlier. It's like you want to upgrade everything about your appearance, not just like yourself, but the booth. Does your booth need an upgrade? Are your sets, are your wood blocks dirty, right? Do you need to send stuff back for refurbishment? Is your bacon serve set, barbecue set scratched? A lot of you have your own personal kit. Some of you guys have joint kits. But does it look the way it should to produce at the level that you want to? So that's like a self-evaluation for each team to like look at that. But you want to have the best in show class display, right? So we invested tens of thousands of dollars in different booths to upgrade it, and obviously Kareem, spent a lot of money on his booth. So those are the main things that were the biggest needle movers to help us grow in the last few years, and what I've observed when I was up and coming in the business.
All right, yeah. Awesome stuff. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about kind of the journey of, 2002 until 2018, long time. And I'm not speaking just to coordinators, but this is the responsibility of every single one of you in the room. If you're on a fair and show team, an events team, then you're just as much a part of that journey and you getting to those goals or not. So to give you an idea, in 2003, I showed up to run the meeting, and I had 65 people sitting in that room because every DM sent every rep that they thought should get some shifts because they heard we sold $33,000 the year before at the fair, right? So it was basically like a 3-year process of convincing DMs and DVMs that not everybody should work this show. This was our golden show back then because, in a time where we sold $500 at a show but collected 700 leads, to sell $33,000 at a show was amazing, right? So that's when I really became a stat junkie and broke down every single stat that we had. And at the end of each fair season, I would sit down with the DMs and DVMs mostly, because we kind of had 3 DVMs that all kind of overlapped territories in Southern California that were all butting heads and all wanted to put everybody in. And I just sit down there and show them, look, this is somebody that you shoved in. This is how much they sold. They had to spend 9 hours of training. They had to spend about another 10 hours helping set up, tear down. This is a time of promo, right? Bringing promo in and out of the booth, counting, stuff like that. And so they actually lost money. They basically had to write a check to work those shifts and also contribute about 20 hours of free service time. So did that benefit anybody? Well, sometimes standing next to big shippers really helps. Awesome, because that rep just quit, right? So sometimes you just have to sit down. Like if you're in that situation where you have people on your team that maybe shouldn't be on that team, it's time to sit down with that person and have a conversation, right? Level up the entire team and say, hey, it's time to, or get off the pot, because you're holding the team back. And then it's time to really have that conversation with the DVM. Just because somebody's an assistant manager in an office doesn't mean they should be working our key event. It's not an entitlement kind of thing, like this is your reward. Your reward for working a big event is having a $4,000 or $3,000 or $5,000 per day average. That means you get to work this kind of event. I came from a time where assistants were in the back of the booth PDIing, right? And I was like, this is not working. It was a mess. So one of the things, it was probably about 2005 or so, Andy Burton and me and Larry, a guy named Larry Rodriguez that some of you remember, we were sitting there working in the booth going, and we had grown it from 33,000 to that next year we did 65,000. The next year we did 96,000. And we were like, one day this is going to be $1 million show. And this was in 2005. And ever since then, that was brought up every single year in training. It was brought up constantly with our team. And so you guys have to have a vision now of where you want to take your events or where you want to take your program as a whole. It's awesome how many programs this year hit $1 million, and kudos to all of you in this room for making that happen. But when is that going to become a $2 million program, a $3 million program? And it's time to kind of buck up and not make excuses for your events, but really instead turn around and look at the opportunity of your events. What if Jason, Jeffrey, Curtis, and Brandon came in and worked this show? What would the results be then? So why aren't they those results? Because you're just as good as them. You have all the resources. We've all listened to the same stuff this conference. We're all going home with the same ammo, right? It's just who really takes the time to dig in and implement those things. And then you want to kind of dig in with your top people on your team. I made it a mission of myself for myself. Like if I was going to be teaching and running this organization, then I had to be one of the top guys. And so, all through the years, me and Andy always swapped for best averages. And I remember right about the time Andy left, Brandon came in. And I loved seeing the frustration in his eyes. every single day he'd be like, what are you at? I'm at 0. You know, because I'm always at 0. Mindset, right? Write that 5K order. It's gone. It's in the binder. I forgot about it. I'm at 0. Got to go big. And just when I say I love the frustration is because he was hungry and he wanted to learn and he wanted to get there. And then I remember like the very first day that he passed me and just his little smirk that he gets. There it is. And just that pride, right, that you could see in him. And then as he started to beat me more and more and more, you know, and I think now this last year I was in a different category, but I think the last 2 years before that, he had the number 1 average and I had the number 2 average. And that's a beautiful thing, right? When the student passes the teacher. And it's kind of like, as a coordinator, you kind of have that parental type feeling of pride, right? So whatever position you're in, whether you are the coordinator or you're the person on the team, you should have that same hunger, that same drive to motivate your people. And what is your vision? You know, look now at what are your top 3 events. In fact, write them down right now. What are your top 3 events that you can take from 20, 30, 40,000 to $1 million? Because a $30,000 event can become a $1 million event. Same number of days. Actually, we have less days now. It used to be 25 days, I think, like the Del Mar Fair and some others. So, and then what I did is, you know, I didn't do all the teaching and stuff. Basically, every year for the following fair, the training for that and the planning out the training for that started during this year's fair. You know, I always had a file of notes of things that were happening this year that we need to fix and work on next year. And it was constantly thinking year-round and asking the other top reps on the team, hey, what can we do to grow? You know, there's years that I sent out surveys at the end of the fair. You know, what did you like about this year's training? What was missing from this year's training? What do you think is our biggest growth opportunity? And so that I wasn't just thinking of everything myself, you know, but I had a lot of great minds thinking of the same things. And as a team, it's amazing the stuff that you come up with. And then, you know, it got to the position where I was teaching less and less and less, and I was like, one of the questions would be, what is your greatest strength? And so I'd have Deanna give a message. I'd have Andy give a message. I'd have Brandon give a message. Leah give a message. And, you know, we could learn from other people's strengths. And as a team, that's where you can rise up more than any one of you can on your own, right? And with one person being in charge. There's no one person that's in charge of your fair and show program. It's always a team effort. And that was one of the things that we used to do starting, you know, 3-4 months before the fair. The first email would go out in the summer of talking about the vision for the coming year. And I would never say what the goal is. I would ask what the goal is. And we would come up with it as a team. You know, and always I was dropping hints and guiding people along the way. And, hey, last year we did this. These are the factors that are going to make us grow this year. And I would say the factors, you know. I would plant those seeds. I would tell them, well, we're going to get better at this, this, and this. I would tell my teammates what you're going to get better at this year. And so they'd come to training ready to get better at that. And then, you know, we'd even have PCs with people one-on-one to identify, hey, what's your biggest growth area? Okay, I want to see you work on that. We're going to have drill for skill next week and things like that. And so everybody had 100% accountability. And sometimes it's time to trim the fat. And don't be scared of that, you know. And if you're the one getting trimmed, it should make sense to you because it's an accountability issue. And if you're not willing to be a star member of that team, and if you're content being in the shadows and have somebody else rising up, well then this just is not the spot for you. Then go out and do service calls and demos. There's plenty of other areas of the business. But what you have to realize that it essentially takes away from your teammates, it takes away from your team, it takes away from your district, it takes away from your division, it takes away from Cutco Corporation if you're going out and selling $500 on a shift when somebody else could have gone out and sold $3,000 on that shift. Does that make sense? So take that personal accountability to get your stats up to those high-level numbers, right? Let's see. I don't know. Leah and Brandon covered so much good stuff. I think I'm going to stop there, and we'll just open up Q&A if there's time.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Kareem. We do have time for Q&A, so if you guys are cool with it. Who's got a question for these three guys just on the topic of the LA County Fair? Let's start over here with Mr. Carlton. Who else has one? Keep your hand up. Okay. And we'll go over here to the far side of the room over there. So, yep, all the way over. 2 rows up from the back. Yeah. All right, cool. So tell us who you are, where you're from.
Carlton from the great state of Oklahoma.
Everybody say, what's up, Carlton?
My question is related to marketing and past customer-driven business. Specifically, how did you, as an event and as a team, formulate your ideas for marketing to your past customers? Did you all do it together? Since you guys have so many heavy hitters, do y'all all do it individually? Or what's the effort that goes into specific past customer-driven business and driving as much CPO as possible to the booth? And what helped you make those decisions?
When there was CTS Creative, we always used Chuck, because Chuck is Deanna's husband, and so he would be in our marketing meeting, or one of our trainings to send out the postcard. Ever since then, we use obviously DPZ marketing, and we also use Word the Impression. So we have the same specials on our postcards, just so you're aware. Maybe the design is different, but we make sure that it's kind of a similar specials. So that way, if a customer shows up in building 9 with Deanna's card and she's in building 4, it's not throwing off. Let's say Brandon is building 9 at that moment, and that customer sees that postcard from Deanna, and then Brandon's customer's like, wait, mine's different specials, you know? So we try to make sure it's congruent, all the specials congruent. In terms of business this year, let's see, I have it down. From postcard orders, building 4 sold $48,000 in postcard orders, $43,000 from building 7, $46,000 from building 9, and I think cookware, you easily did about 20 grand in postcard, something like that. So postcard business over 150 grand of our business. That drives attendance for us, because LA County Fair, when it's hot in September, and when I mean hot, it's like muggy, 95 degrees, 100, 110, people are fainting people don't even want to show up to the fair. So we have to find a way to drive business. So sometimes we'll even do like emails. A lot of my team, they're on email marketing, text marketing, and they'll email out customers and text and remind them, here's my schedule, here's where I'm at, come these days, opening weekend special, last day special. Like, there's always special along the way to drive business, because we can't always predict who's going to come pay for a ticket at the LA County Fair. We can only control how much marketing we put out there.
Yeah, the only other thing I'll add to that is, at the beginning, when we first started doing marketing, it was actually mandatory. And we had a new section in our stat sheet that was postcard visits, postcard orders, postcard CPO, and we started tracking that. So it was mandatory for 1 year, and there was a lot of people, especially the trim the fat kind of people, that kind of didn't make sense for them to have to spend an extra $3,000, $4,000, whatever it was for them, when they weren't selling very much. But it was mandatory, and after that, the stats just proved it to everybody that how worth it was. And so besides that, the other thing that I think most of us do, and nothing's mandatory anymore on the team in marketing regards, except being uniform in the offers. But the other thing is getting your drips out, getting those preset well in advance. It's not something you want to have to think about the month of when you're in the midst of your state fair, your big event. But having those lined up 2-3 months before, with just a couple plug-ins that you can plug in. This is where I'm at so far. This is how much I have to go. Team goals, whatever it might be. But systematically kind of knowing ahead of time when those are going to drop. A couple days before the fair, when during the fair, a couple days after the last weekend. And Josh and Vast Action are great at setting up your timing for that. If you have no idea when they should be going out or what kind of content to put in there, it's all preset and done for you already.
All right, let's go over here. If you could tell us who you are, where you're from.
Daniel Petty from Alberta, Canada.
Hey, Danny.
How are you doing?
Great, thanks. What's your question?
Obviously my situation is a little bit different than a lot of other people, but I'm just wondering if any of you have had an assistant at the booth before, maybe to help write up order forms or get service call information from somebody so that you can stay with the people, or, just wondering if any of you have ever had an assistant at the booth that you hired.
Yeah, can you repeat the question, Danny, just a little more clearly?
Just wondering if you've ever had an assistant at the booth that you've hired to help with, like, writing up order forms or that kind of thing, or if any of you, that's just not a thing.
Yeah, great question. I would say, the direct answer to your question is no, we don't have like a hired assistant that comes to each and every booth every single day to like help with writing up orders. But with that said, over the last several years, we've really paid attention to the level of traffic that takes place in each building. and overall over the course of the entire event, a Wednesday versus a Saturday or a Sunday. And we want to make sure that we're maximizing every single day with every opportunity. So, you know, for our buildings, we don't have less than 3 people ever working like an actual booth. Like there's always 3 people there to maximize. And we understand there's going to be times where it's slow, but overall we want to catch the rush as much as possible and also make sure it's profitable as much as possible for everybody also. So it's 3 to 4 people, and sometimes we'll have swing shifts that come in during certain hours. So maybe it might be 3 people, and then the fourth person will be a swing shift. So we want to just be able to extract as much CPO, because we never want to have situations where there's, you know, several customers at the booth and they're waiting and we just can't get to them, and then they end up like walking away. So Kareem's been really good about being in tune with that and asking the group like what we need at any given point in time. So we've adjusted our schedules over the last several years to really maximize that opportunity. And we have a lot of people who obviously come and cross-train. So when they come, obviously they're help fielding. You know, we had a whole panel on that, so we implement a lot of those strategies as well.
Yeah, it's something that we've talked about for years, just, you know, paying somebody $100 to spend the day in the booth because they can sit there and learn from everybody and write orders and things like that. We've never actually implemented it, but I think that's a big area of innovation for next year. There's plaques going around for innovation. That's what I heard.
And to be honest with you, the reason I think we really haven't had assistants do that is because the game starts when you get the credit card, right? So the upselling. So why am I going to hand off the order form to a rep when I'm going to try to upsell? Because we have an upsell column in our stats, and that also contributed to at least 150 grand in sales of upselling. So after you get the credit card and they already bought that homemaker, are you adding gadgets? Are you adding flatware on top of that? Adding business gift orders. So that's part of it. When you have an assistant, that means you should have more people working in the booth if you're that busy. And that's why it becomes competitive, and I never have less than 3 people working unless somebody goes home sick. Late at night, I leave too, but it drives us to work harder because, like, wow, so-and-so has a customer. I have to get a customer now too. So there's a strategy and a method of why we make sure there's a lot of people in the booth at the same time. Because I know if I'm working and I want to keep my averages, I'm going to figure out a way to get myself to that $3,000 to $4,000 for the day, even though it's been a slow day. And the same thing is with everybody on our team. So think of it that way. An assistant means if you need an assistant to help you, you just need another rep that's really kick butt that's going to sell. Because really, when I hear there's booths with only 1 person in there or 2, I'm like, that's just selfish of that rep because they don't want to share the goods of that show and they don't care about the success long-term of the event. Because you're taking away, if you could duplicate yourself and triple yourself, that's how you grow shows to $1 million. You just don't do it with 1 person sitting there and taking $1 million worth of CPO. It will never happen, guaranteed.
Cool. Okay, another question. Let's go to the back. It's like a lottery. I love it. Tell us your name, where you're from. Oh, Mike check.
Hello.
There we
Check
go.
1, 2. Stephen Decker from the great state of Texas.
Everybody
In
say,
Dallas.
hey, Stephen. Everybody say, hey, Stephen. All right. Let's bring the energy up. I'm going to give you guys a count till 3. I want you to do it at level 10 energy. Give Stephen as much energy as you've got for his epic question that he's about to ask. I don't even know what it is, but I know it's going to be epic. You guys ready? On 3, hey, Stephen. 1, 2, 3.
I'm trying to put you in the
There we go.
That's better. Okay. So I really want to know, what are some of the specific things that you guys do, consciously or unconsciously, to create an engageable culture and atmosphere at the booth that makes it to where not only are you guys making sure that everyone at the booth is staying upbeat and staying engaged, but that customers actually want to come up and actually talk to you?
Can you say that last part? I just missed the
Yeah. Basically, what are you guys doing to make sure that you all at the booth are staying upbeat and staying engaged personally, and also making it to where customers want to come up to your booth and talk to you?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. So I mentioned that a little bit earlier when I was just sharing for my few minutes, but having that group thread has been really like impactful. I just held myself accountable to basically every single night or morning having some type of text that was inspirational, motivational, help shift the perspective. Like if we had a really, really bad day, it's like just put it in perspective on like how that doesn't really matter as long as we come back tomorrow like on, running on all cylinders. And so simple things like that just to kind of guide the mindset of every single person. And I know as like a team and just knowing the individuals on the team, we took the time like within each booth like to obviously check in with everybody. I know there was people who were reviewing like notes from messages or trainings that we had leading up to the event or just Vector Connect talks, like the drive to 30 minutes, an hour, 2 hours to the event just to keep their honed skill or their skills honed and sharp and on point. So I would say those are a few things. I'll let these guys share too.
Yeah, and I know sometimes in the morning, like Brandon would lead kind of like mental exercises, like deep breathing exercise. I don't know how much of that you did this year, but I know we did that the year before. Over in my booth, I had a mic and speakers, and so I actually would, I had the greatest salesman in the world, Og Mandino, and I'd get on the mic and read scrolls every morning. One scroll every morning, and all the vendors, it got to where all the vendors would come in the morning, and I'd cook breakfast, and they'd be lined up, and it was awesome, like all my neighbors. And that just like, they were really thanking me too. Use other vendors around you too, like the positive ones. There's a lot of negative vendors out there, but use your influence to make them positive, because the more you spin positivity, the more positive you become. And then just little things to fire yourself up during the day. I think when you have like a situation like Leo was talking about, when our booths are always pretty maxed out with the number of people in them, there really is no opportunity to slack off, because we kind of have a thing of taking turns and things like that, but we also have a thing of if you are slacking off and you're texting and whatever and you let that person walk by you, then it's mine. So stay on point, stay on your game.
Also, especially during a long fair, it's important to we have theme days. When I was in high school, I was a activities commissioner, so I was in charge of Spirit Week. So I'm like, so it's fun just doing. When Dave came, we did Superhero Day. So we made sure we got Dave a shirt. So when he showed up, we took a picture with him, and everyone was all fired up with their like Marvel comic ones or Batgirl, whatever it was. So keeping the enthusiasm and just NFL Day we did on Sundays, College Day. We're open on 9/11, so we had America Day, so everybody was wearing red, white, and blue, or flags, or whatever it was. So putting theme days together keeps not the monotony of the same thing every day happening. I think that's really important as well. And I'm trying to think, there was something else that you were talking about. Oh, okay, so we would do the T-shirts. It started like, 5, 6 years ago. It was me and Laura, and we were coordinating together, and I'm like, we gotta just have something we have like the same, not the polo shirts are boring. Let's have some like, because we have those crazy lines like the fisherman's solution, when you put it in your hand, it goes from 6 to 9 inches. We do stupid things like that with customers. We're like, what if we could just do like a shirt that just says something kind of naughty, but it's not. If you take it out of the context, it could be. So we just started with, bigger is better. And then, or size does matter, and things of that sort. And so Chuck back then made those shirts, and this year was great. We did the Nike shirt. We did it with the bird's beak paring knife flipped, so it's like the wing, and it says just get it. Instead of just do it, it's just get it. And so when customers are like, I don't know, and we'd be like just get, all right, so usually we do fun stuff like that. Also, because we've known each other for many years, we get comfortable. And I know that when Deanna's closing on a signature and that customer's kind of like a fun customer, I can go grab from the fridge the biggest carrot I could find, and I just throw it on the prospectus as I walk by, and her customer will be busting up laughing, and it kind of breaks the silence. So we just know how to work with each other. So if there's somebody on your team that you know how to work with and have fun with, it's always cool to do stuff like that to break up the boring times as well. So
Great, thank you. I have a question. So I'm curious, what are some of the ways, just kind of piggybacking off what you just wrapped up with there, what are some of the ways that you guys, having worked together for so long, do play off each other in order to just help customers feel more comfortable in those tense decision-making moments, or to kind of make light of situations in order to just just kind of decompress things and help customers feel more confident and more comfortable just making the decision to buy today and tying them into the energy of the booth and the energy of the group and the goals and stuff like that.
We had also role played on using another rep as the manager of the booth. Hey, let me go ask my manager if I can get this deal. This is a crazy deal. Let me see if I can get away with it. So what I kind of do is, I'll go to people like Deanna, people that I know at the booth, and I'm all like, could you look at this deal that I'm giving them, Brandon? Like, please let them, tell them if this is for real, like, if I could really do this. And then Brandon would be like, what are you doing? Like, or I'll do it for somebody else. Like, are you kidding me? Are you going to pay that much money out of your pocket? Do you want to make money on this order? So I'm like, look, if you get it right next, we're trying to beat our record. We're trying to be the first ever $1 million show, and you're going to help break records with us. Please get it right now. Another thing we did is we would take pictures with our clients. And so the last day of the fair, I remember we had the blown up cheese knife in the booth. And we would take people that were buying sets or whatever. I had two 24-year-old, actually 22, 24-year-old girls from LMU, and they're like, buying showstoppers from me, like the last few hours. I'm like, you're gonna help us break the record. Oh my gosh, put it on your social media. And so we took a picture of them with the cheese knife, like, look, and then I sent it in the group text to the team, like, look, I got 24-year-olds to buy showstoppers. Anybody can afford Cutco. It's only like $95 a month, So stuff like that.
I would just add, obviously every customer is different and every representative is different, so you kind of have to identify the chemistry between each representative on the team and find like what synergy and works with each group or each couple people when you're working as a group. But there would be times where like simple lines that you can use if you're like newer and have trouble like handling the I need to think about it close, or I need my spouse here. A good like scapegoat is like, listen, first of all, we always pre-frame this in the beginning of the conversation and then sync it back up at the end. But it's like, hey, we're on a mission to break the all-time national sales record in the history of Cutco. We're trying to do $1 million in 19 days. So obviously you don't have to get anything, but if you do see anything you like, it's gonna help us towards our goal. So even just like a quick plug like that, and then when you get to the end and they're like, oh, we're gonna think about it, you're like, hey, remember I told you, like, we've been working our tail off. We're working like 15-hour days, 100-hour weeks, and we're doing everything we can to like make this goal a reality, and this is gonna be like historic in the, several years Cutco's been in business. So let's do this. My manager's across the way, Kareem, or Leah, or whoever, like you can just make that up. Let me bring them over and just see if there's anything else that we can do. Now, you might feel more comfortable having someone else like completely take over the pitch, right? Or some of you just might need that approval, or you just need to walk away and come back. But really at the end of the day, it comes down to like perceived value and having the customer feel like they're getting the best possible deal. It's not about how much you're actually discounting. They don't know how bonus points and ratios work, right? So even though you can discount it less, it doesn't mean you have to. And that's a big thing Kareem like struck a chord with me when I was a new rep, and something I like stuck with is like it's all about the perceived value. I'll just like quick analogy. You go into a car dealership and you see a car that's worth $10,000, and you walk up and you're like, I'll buy this car right now for $8,000. And then the sales rep's like, deal, right? Like within a second. Do you feel like you got a good deal? Of course not, right? Because it was the quickest, easiest sale. But if you do the same scenario, all else equal, right, and you don't know about scenario number one, and you walk up, car's worth $10,000, and you say, I'll buy it for $8,000, and the representative's like, oh man, like there is no way we can sell it for $8,000. But it's the end of the month, we're working really hard to hit our goal, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Let me go talk to my manager and just see what we can do. But I know for a fact we can't do $8,000, but I'll work with you to see what we can do. Come back 5 minutes later, or whatever the scenario might be. He's like, listen, we can't do 8,000, but we can do 9,000. And I'll tell you right now that is hands down the best deal I've ever seen on this package or on this car, or whatever it might be. And obviously, you spent $1,000 more, but you feel way better about that interaction and like making that purchase. So it really comes down to perceived value. So I know that's a kind of off the path, but valuable.
That's great. We got time for one more question. We got any ladies with a question? Yeah, Cassie right here. Cool. Brian kept his hand up high, just so y'all know. I said, "Do we have any ladies with a question?" And he was like, "Me." So, awesome. Let us know who you are, where you're from.
Cassie Torres from Austin, Texas. And this kind of has to do with more like mentality. This is a long event, long days, long hours. So every now and then, sometimes we can let ourselves slip into that rut. Maybe we had a bad day the day before or just a bad interaction. So what do you do to keep yourself kind of on point and pull yourself out of that to get you back to where you need to be as quickly as possible?
Well, first of all, when we do, I think you touched upon it with the averages. We used to do like shift average, like average per day per rep. But because we were changing up the amount of hours that certain reps were working, like some days people would work a full day, others would work 3/4 of a day, others would work 5 hours in a day, a half day. So we changed it this year to how much are you selling per hour? What are you worth per hour? So that way, instead of me thinking, how am I going to get to 4,000 at the end of the day, I'm like, well, let me focus on 400 an hour. Because 400 an hour feels, it's easier to digest, right? Like, okay, I just have to get two $200 orders or one $400 order. And just keeping that in the back of my head, and a lot of the reps saying, hey, I just got my 500 for the hour. Okay, my next hour is starting, you know? And just kind of keeping it like that, playing a game with yourself helps. Also, when you have other people in the booth with you, you know, you're having a bad day, I would walk over to people like John, like, hey, how are you doing? I'm like, God, I had these 2 people and they did this, and this. Like, how would you have handled it? Like, what would have you done? Or I do that with Deanna. Or they'll do vice versa to each other. You know, we just talk it through when it's like dead. We're like, hey, how do you think we get through this slump? Or, you know, and just talking to other people makes a big difference. It doesn't help when all 4 people are super negatives. There's always going to be somebody positive in a booth, no matter what. So just work with people that help you and teach you and are not afraid to share the goods with you. Because I know a lot of times growing up in the business, I found myself like, wow, if they're teaching me something, maybe they're like, ooh, she's going to outsell me now. You know, and that's not the mentality we have in our team. And it shouldn't be on any team. It should always be like, you know what, if I'm going to teach somebody to outsell me, great. I was able to impact them in a positive way. And in the end, your skills get better too by teaching. So
starting with the basics, the night before a big show is not the night to go out, right, and party late. So the simple, obvious things, 8 hours of sleep. Seth has a great talk where he just talks about energy from food and eating the right things and stuff like that. And that's key for an entire month when you're in your big show seasons. But throughout the day, it's also, a lot of it's just before. A lot of it happens right now. What are you going to do this entire year? Playing those scenarios out in your head of, you know, what am I going to do when it's 5 o'clock and I'm at 0? How am I going to react? And you make that plan right now so that you can fall back on that and use that as a resource when that time comes. You know, so that when you have a false missile scare in Hawaii, because it's been talked about so much lately, we had a plan and we implemented it. Where if we didn't have a plan, we would have been like, and just running around like chickens with our heads cut off, which we kind of were. But also, there's times where in the past I've had to just step out of the booth, you know, and just go clear my head. Sometimes it's calling my wife because she's an amazing motivator. Sometimes it's, you know, reading something motivational. Sometimes it's just getting outside of the booth and just walking through mentally, hey, well, what could I have done different to make my day different so far? And then really, I talk about the reset button all the time. Like, my kids know the reset button, and it's really awesome because now they come to me and they're like, Dad, I was at school and this person said this and this happened. Dad, I hit the reset button, you know, and it's an awesome thing. So really quickly, I'll share a story that I've shared with my team many times. This wasn't that long ago, maybe 4 years ago. You know, I was pretty strong in sales, and it was a Saturday. You know, Saturday you expect to crush from the get-go, and everybody was crushing, except for me. I mean, it was like everybody had 2, 3, 4 orders, ultimate here, flatware there, and I was at 0. And time goes on, and now it's halfway through the day, and I'm at 0 on a Saturday, and Brandon's at like 5K or something like that, you know, and I'm freaking out. And, you know, it's really easy, it's like a downward spiral then. It's not like this, it's like, right? So I had to leave the booth, and I was really, really freaking out and pissed off and just angry and sad and everything, and called my wife, talked to her for 2-3 minutes, and then just sat there for a good 30 minutes, you know, and that gives me anxiety, because those of you that work with me know that I don't leave the booth for 14 hours. Like, I don't go to the bathroom during fair days. Like, so to leave the booth for a half an hour is a big deal already, but I knew that that time was more valuable, and I just sat there and I thought about how I wanted the rest of the day to go. And, you know, like Leah was saying, we have multiple shifts throughout the day, so some people were coming in for that second shift, and at that change of shift, I was writing up my first order for like $130. That's where my day was at. But I'd spent that half an hour visioning the rest of the day, and long story short, that second half of the day, I sold $9,800, and this is before I'd ever had a 10K day at the booth. So that was huge for me, and I mean, just that whole experience opened my eyes up to what's possible for a full day, a full good day. But the point being that you hit that reset button, and I basically just went in going, hey, I'm coming in for my shift. And I literally walked into the booth like, hey, how you guys doing so far for the day? Like, I just got there, you know? And it's hard to do, but think about those things now. Play those scenarios through your mind right now and figure out how you're going to react when that happens. Yeah.
Awesome, great story. So I would say, great question, by the way, and I think the first thing I would say, what it really comes down to is you have to just take like ownership of where you're at, right? Like, take full responsibility for where you're at. I think that's like a huge like mental shift, you know, because when you're going through the day and you're having a bad day, just take ownership. You know what? Maybe you let some people walk that you shouldn't have. Maybe you were just getting the wrong customers and it was just a bad series of customers. Regardless of the situation, you can't control it at this point, right? You can't go back in time. There's no time machine. But what you can control is what you do moving forward for the rest of the day, right? And, you know, this is something I live by, and I know Jason mentioned it in his message, but it's like, how are you going to choose to respond to the situation, right? Mental fortitude. Like, the greatest reps in the company also have the strongest mental fortitude. Like, you can't be one of the great reps in the company and not have strong mental fortitude. And I truly believe that, because you're gonna have challenges. Doesn't matter how good, how long you've been in the business, it's gonna happen. But how you choose to respond to those situations and move forward is gonna be the difference between being a good rep and being a great rep, having a 3K day and having a 10K day, right? It comes in waves. So it's a matter of like, how do you impact every single situation? So I think that's a big like shift and something you can practice, like Kareem said, now as you lead up to your big events. And that's a good way to look at it. It's like, I'm having a really bad day. How can I practice at getting better at like having a positive attitude for the rest of the day? Because there's gonna be bigger, more important days at busier events where the longer I'm in a negative mindset, the longer it's gonna, the bigger negative impact it's gonna have, the more sales I'm gonna lose out on. So practice on your small events now, right? Hone your skills for the big events. So that would be one thing. And then this has all been shared, but good reinforcement is like, what are you eating? What are you putting in your body, right? I only drink water. I only drink alkaline water. And I like have meal preps for like all my big events. Like, you ask probably most of the top reps, they're never eating at the state fairs, ever. Like, that is like the biggest mistake you could ever make, right? I don't think almost anybody on our team ever like placed one order at anything at the LA County Fair, just because we're responsible for our energy and our health. And you have to know yourself, and that kind of leads into like, if it is a long day, right, ask yourself, you know, can you optimize at the highest level working all day? And if your body can, or if it's not something you want to do, then have someone come in and take over, right? You're better off working less hours at a high level performance and being happier and more fulfilled than being like, oh, I have to work the whole day, and then being, you know, dragging through. Like, I strategically take off, I know Josh does this, specific days throughout large events so you can recharge. Because whatever CPO you might lose during that day, you'll more than make up on other days throughout the entire event.